Okay. We are live now on YouTube. Today is April 6th, 2020. This is the Rochester City Council Chairs meeting being held virtually on a Zoom call. Katie Hasselwander, our staff member, is connecting the call from YouTube to Facebook now. And when that is done, she will let us know and we can proceed with the meeting.
One second.
And Councilmember Gruber has just joined, as has Councilmember Lupien on her laptop.
Okay, it's live.
Okay. So we are ready to go.
All righty. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Happy Monday. So we'll start with the committee reports. Councilmember Evans.
Yeah, so everyone's, through agenda review, you saw the legislation that we have. Obviously, we'll be getting more information, but this is going to be an extremely tough budget year for us as well as the Rochester City School District. Also, probably more so for more. We were doing great, but then this happened. So this is really going to change a lot of things. But you guys all know that. I mean, I won't go into too much detail because we're going to be having a lot of conversations about budget stuff going forward. The other thing I'll mention too is BJ sent out information regarding a session that will be through technology, through Zoom, with the finance committee of the school district and the finance committee of anyone is welcome to attend. You don't have to be on the finance committee to attend, but if you can't, no big deal. But we're gonna try to get a handle on
The council member is breaking up.
what's happening with their budget. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Am I breaking up, BJ?
You are.
Yes.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why. But the purpose of the meeting is hopefully to be able to get a little bit more into the budget instead of waiting till the day in June when they come before us. So it may be one of more conversations, but I at least want to give folks the opportunity to hear from them and what's in their budget so we can start addressing questions months ahead of time and instead of waiting for the last minute. So that will be our first opportunity to get a first crack at any questions that we might have, and then bring up any other issues. I'm checking in with Chris tomorrow, so I may have more stuff, but that's really it for now.
And we don't have an official date and time on that yet. We still have it sent to the school district to confirm the times that folks have already responded to on our end.
Right. And we have two proposed dates, right, BJ?
One proposed date, two proposed times.
Two proposed times, right? Okay. Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Malik?
Yeah.
Has there been any conversations yet about, I mean, obviously a lot of the different, or some of the different stimulus packages have dollars that are supposed to go directly to the municipality. Have there been conversations about what those dollars can be used for, how they're going to be used, et cetera, et cetera?
No, I think those conversations are still happening as we grapple around what was in the legislation that was passed. But if you notice, unfortunately, a lot of the legislation that was passed, municipalities weren't really considered at all. When you think about it, we're going to be losing lots of sales tax revenue. I think it could be as much as 20%. Hotel motel tax, which is going to be huge for Rochester. So we're probably going to have to do some more advocacy to make sure that municipalities can get more. I think one of the reasons why you're seeing us go back to departments, including our body ourselves, in terms of making adjustments and cuts, is because we don't know what kind of relief we may be getting with this thing, because the first two waves didn't address municipalities at all. So
Right.
that's why I'm so concerned in terms of what we may have to do.
We lost you again, Malik.
I just think we can't stress enough to. Can you hear me now? Is that better?
It is. I think it's saying that you have low bandwidth right now, so I don't.
All right. Yeah. Let me see if I can switch to something. Switch to another line. But yeah. So I think it's going to be it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Okay, is that it?
That's all I
Malik?
have. That's all.
I want to add to it, during our last discussion, one of our discussions, the request was made to get the budget a little early. Actually, according to the charter, when the budget comes to the council, it goes to the public. So we don't have the advantage of an early, like a pre-release with council members.
Can we possibly meet with the auditors again to have a conversation regarding what the school district has already released or what their projections are?
Yeah. We will eventually want to meet with them again, Mike. And also, we definitely want to meet with them because part of what we're hoping for is that there will be a third-party sign-off on their budget before it even comes to us to make sure that the budget, the expense and revenue estimates that we're looking at are looked at with another set of eyes before they come to us. But yeah, I think that we'll probably need to have at least one or two supplement conversations with the comptroller's office.
Also, do we know how the fiscal auditor is going to work? When they'll be appointed? Is that something that's coming online for this budget cycle? What powers specifically they will have? What information do we have regarding that?
I don't know if that legislation's been voted on yet, Mike, but I think that's something that we'll have to get further clarification on once they vote on the legislation. I haven't seen any of the particulars of what because the fiscal monitor and academic monitor are going to be one and the same. They're not going to be separate people.
Okay.
There was a proposal for them to be two different people, but they're going to be the same people. So we're waiting to see what all the details are going to be on what exactly their functions are going to be and how that person is going to be chosen.
And I guess the other question, and you know, I understand the process is still working. Are they actually going to have any real control? I mean, it's one thing if they're just going to watch. It's another thing if they'll be able to, you know, take the wheels, take the control of the car away from them and grab the keys. I guess that's the real question.
I mean, my understanding is that they're going to be right in with the state education department. And if there's something that's happening where the district is not working collaboratively and taking the advice of this person, they get to run that up to the state education department, who I think will have the power to intervene.
Okay, and I want to clarify my comment about the release of the budget to council is regarding the city's operation budget. I thought, Malik, I thought you were done, so I was just adding that to this segment. Okay, Mike?
Okay, so
Councilmember Patterson?
I'm still Mike. Okay, so nothing, I mean, we just had agenda review, so everybody knows everything that we've got and what we're working on. I guess the only question or issue to bring up possibly for discussion, if anybody wants to discuss it, would be items 76 and 77 that are the held items regarding the playground for the school. Unless anybody has any concerns or issues or wants to have some discussion on that, there's really nothing else right now.
Well, I can just be upfront that I'm not going to plan to vote for it unless the homeowners are okay with selling their homes or have a suitable option to recreate the situation where they can live in close proximity to their other relatives who live in that neighborhood. Personally, I think the school's gone a while without having a playground, and I don't see a rush. And I would like to take the time to work with them to make sure that they're not just compensated for the fair market value of their home, but for what they'd actually be losing.
Well, so I understand your concern. You're new to council. This is a process that we have used before in the past in a range of areas. In my short time on council, my experience has been that the city is very considerate of the homeowners. They work closely with them. There are relocation dollars that are available, and it is an ongoing conversation. The legislation allows the administration to move forward with the conversation. Part of the issue and the concern at this time is, quite frankly, that the homeowners aren't talking to the city. So, you know, this isn't our project. This is the school district's project. This is part of our responsibility as a city to acquire land for them for the projects that they identify and they roll out with. You know, I'm actually not trying to convince anybody anywhere. But one of the larger concerns is that it's negotiation, the legislation that requires negotiation makes possible negotiation or condemnation for a public use. You don't get much more of a public use than a playground for a school. And this is a tool that we have used in the past. There's still a lot more room for conversation, but it allows the administration to move forward with the conversation and to get things done. Now the other side of this is, in my mind, as a body, the concern is this: if we are not willing to consider condemnation for public use, that really does restrain a great deal of work that we'll be able to do in the future. This is a tool that we have. Condemnation is certainly not the first option in anything the city does, but it is about but the process has been redesigned in such a way over the last 50 odd years where there are a lot more protections for the homeowner, for the property owner. It's not just here's your money, now go away. There's also relocation dollars that come with that too. And if you're not, as a body, if we aren't willing to consider condemnation, then that means any property owner anywhere has, in my mind, and I may well be wrong, has the ability to stop any project by just simply saying no. And so that's a concern.
I can understand that. I think that, by saying this, I don't think I'm making a blanket statement, but that it's, specific to this project, that this family has a significant amount to lose. And, I think it's a little bit more complicated to negotiate how we replace what they have. It's not just the value of their home, it's the relationships that they built in that community and, within family, and there's caretaking involved and there's sick people and we're in the middle of a crisis. I would feel comfortable voting for this if condemnation wasn't included to allow for more negotiation. But if condemnation is included, we have no recourse if, the city / school district decides they're done waiting. So that's just where I stand. And, I understand your perspective.
Thank you. Any
Mike,
other concerns with you?
yeah, Mike, this is Mitch. I just like to know, I think one of the reasons why I was pretty insistent about holding it last month is because it felt at the time like based on the public hearing, it felt like there was not a lot of negotiation that had been done to that point, and it felt like it was kind of unnecessarily rushed based on how little work could actually be done in the midst of the pandemic. I presume in the last month there has been at least some attempted progress towards the negotiation. I know from previous, I think from the Laura Street stuff, that the administration is not able to publicly share what the negotiations are right now, but I'd like some type of update as to if negotiations have started, what's happening, and at least the information we can know.
And just as a note, Councilmember Gruber, that is one of the agenda review questions for an update on the negotiation process. So that has been asked and we will anticipate a response.
The response is though also that administration is prepared to share that in executive session. We can schedule that and make it happen.
I just would add that, I too am not as comfortable with this particular item. Just for the fact of all the racial equity and leadership work that we've been doing over the last 2 years. And one of the things is displacement, is one of the things that I'm really not comfortable with, especially due to COVID-19. But I just don't feel comfortable with displacing people from their homes if they're not in agreement with a negotiation that seems fair to them for a playground. That's just I'm not feeling that at all. So that's kind of where I stand on it.
To top
Well,
that off,
I would
Councilman
remind.
The other issue is generational wealth building. We're talking about creating wealth in our city for people who have over the many years have not been able to gain that kind of generational wealth. And we're talking about families now that we are getting rid of a home that has been in their family for generations. And this is very impactful for a family like any city resident. So it's different for someone else that's only owned their home for a few years. It's different for someone that's had their home for generations. That's to me is really impactful because in this market, they're not gonna be able to find a house, period. They're not gonna get into another house. They're gonna have to get into an apartment. All right, so we're talking about going from a house that's been in their family for years to living in an apartment to hopefully find a home. And after this pandemic is over with, this is extremely rare situation that we're in right now. We really need to take it with, being light-footed.
Well, Councilmember Teo, I would encourage you to submit that as a question for the administration to answer, because it's speculation on whether or not they would be able to get into a home. It's not a known fact. So I would request that you ask that question of the administration, so that when they come to us, they can answer the question. Again, this isn't our project. This is a school district project. If this body feels that this school doesn't need a playground, regardless of what the school district says, then that's how this body feels. My concern, quite frankly, is with the condemnation process. It is a tool that we use that exists to do public work in the public good. We have used it in the past. I understand that this is a different time. I understand that it is a bit more challenging to do this, and it has been in the past. What I would also encourage you to keep in mind that you may well be setting precedent. We may well be setting precedent if we show a pronounced reluctance to engage in condemnation. So it's just out there for discussion. Again, the item is held. So the item's held until it isn't held. And it doesn't have to come out of committee ever.
Can I ask this question, Mike, and someone else can correct me if I'm wrong? When Alan Williams was at our last committee meeting and this was discussed and he came to give some more insight on it, the question was asked, could this project be built without moving that particular house? His answer was yes. So I guess, that's where I don't understand. It seemed like a win-win is the people stay in their home and they still build the project. I don't understand why that's a problem.
Well,
Mr. Vice President?
Yeah.
Hang on a
Sorry,
second.
Mr. Vice President, I believe the house in question at the time of that meeting was the house on Ahab Street, and this is not the same house that Mr. Williams was referring to. So these are different houses.
Yeah,
Well,
these are different houses.
That would be my question, some clarification on that, on whether or not this project could be done without eliminating this particular house in question.
So it's two houses. So that would be a good question to submit to the administration to answer.
I also just want to say for the record, what I'm hearing is not that this body doesn't want the school to have a playground, but that we're concerned with the displacement of these families. And I think, it's
Yeah.
No
You
option
don't
is
get to have,
good.
well, but I guess then that would be another question to submit to the administration to answer. If you don't get these two properties, what manner of playground can you do in that area? Why do you specifically need those two properties as opposed to any of the others? But at the same time, I would also encourage everyone as much as possible to also remember and understand that as council members, we have a duty and an obligation to not insert ourselves in the negotiation process. There's been some concern that some council members have inserted themselves in the negotiation process. And I'm sure those conversations will be had in greater detail later on in private. But, you know, I received a phone call from the property owner, and the conversation I had with them is, look, I cannot insert myself in this process. You know, all I can encourage you to do is have a conversation with our city rep, make sure that they're aware of your concerns and have that conversation with them. And, you know, as we go forward in the future, when things like this happen, I would just, you know, encourage folks to remember that we have some responsibilities as members of city council. And we need to be careful where the lines are. I'm sure Law can give us a little bit more detail on that, but I would encourage folks to remember that, you know, inserting yourself in a negotiation, especially a negotiation around price and condemnation, you know, negotiation or condemnation is really not a thing the council members should be doing. There are consequences.
Councilmember Patterson, I think that the role of city council is also to ensure that the people that a legislation affects are properly informed and that they know the process to speak up for themselves. And there's no insertion of, you know, helping them argue for a better price or even talking about price. But I think that is part of council's role.
I would encourage you I would encourage you to have a conversation with Law, because I understand your point, but at the same time, there are careful lines that must not be crossed as members of council. Now, if I'm wrong, Council President and Vice President, please correct me.
Well, what I'd like to do, though, clearly there is some question and actually some concern about activities related to this particular item. So what I want to do is to engage a conversation with Law to help clarify our roles, duties, and responsibilities in these instances. So I think even though some of us have been on council for a little while, it would do us well to hear the whole conversation. We know who has been actively engaged in this, but I want to have the conversation with Law and to make it clear how far we can go and what our boundaries are in these circumstances. So with that, we can move on to the next item.
Okay. Well, I think that's everything for, you know, NBD. Unless somebody else has an item that occurred this month or another pressing issue, I think we're pretty much straight.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Gruber.
Hi. I sorry to add to the last point, but it actually links to PPW in a bit, in a sense. One thing that I just want to make sure folks do recognize when it comes to the last piece of legislation related to the potential condemnation or acquisition is that one of the things that, you know, Commissioner Jones is the chair of the school modernization, the joint team, whatever the full name is. And one of the points he was making when I was speaking to him is that, you know, the city of Rochester, as probably all of you know, at one point had 330,000 people in it, and we have about 210,000 now. And hopefully we'll see that continue to grow. But there are strategies that we should be taking as a city to right size. And in fact, what this project does, if it's done well with the playground, is it actually allows us to take a street offline, and which changes things related to the water mains, which changes it basically, it helps to right size the city. Now, my thought process on this personally is that I'm probably somewhere in between Councilmember Lupien and Councilmember Patterson. I certainly want to make sure that every single one of our residents, every single one of our city taxpayers gets their fair share and gets some equity. But I also think that folks need to think about this as more than just a playground, but also as part of a process to right size the city. So I just want to say that because it does bleed into PPW. And in terms of our packet of legislation, the only major points that I would make are what I think I mentioned in the agenda review, which is that we have a lot of legislation here for some important construction projects, but some of them do seem like they are non-essential. And I think it's a big question for us to be able to understand what the administration's perspective is on whether or not we move forward with things that do not seem absolutely critical and essential at a moment where we know there's going to be a lot of construction crews who do not want to come to work and don't feel safe coming to work. My understanding is that there's some challenges because the way that contracts are written is that if either the city or the construction company doesn't finish in the amount of time they had designated beforehand, there could be fees or fines or litigation. But I think that's stuff that we need to be addressing now proactively to make sure we're not unnecessarily doing construction work that's not essential at a moment where we don't want to have unnecessary work. So that's really the thing that's high on my mind. I don't know, President Scott, is there anything you want to add about that?
Well, I'm hoping that that will be covered in the question that we raised at agenda review in terms of how these projects tie into our responsibility for doing essential versus non-essential projects and frankly, the optics of it. So hopefully we'll get that back from council with that, from administration with that response.
Yep. I mean, I went through and kind of did my version of what feels essential versus non-essential. It's not scientific. It's not even objective. It was subjective, but in my mind, there's probably more of the things in the packet this month are in fact, I would call them essential things like road work. The fact is that we still need to have roads that are cleared for emergency services vehicles and refuse and things like that. So it makes sense to do work on roads, but there's other things that might not make sense. So we'll see what the administration comes back and says.
And the administration has already started doing that analysis on essential versus non-essential. So I don't think that anything that's in the packet this month is non-essential stuff. They've already started. In my conversation with budget, looking at projects that are essential versus non-essential.
Well,
and they'll give us and I'm sure, and they're going to give us an update on that.
But I do think that's one place where there is, council discretion might be different than administration discretion. I'll give you one example in the packet this month is a receipt and use of $300,000 of CDBG dollars for the Don Samuel Torres Park. I mean, all of you know, I've been working very closely with RIBAL, with the Hispanic Youth Baseball League at Don Samuel Torres Park. I really want that to move forward. I don't know if right now spending $300,000 of CDBG dollars on helping to clean up a baseball diamond is, it might be technically essential. I'm not sure that it's what we would describe as essential. And I think those are conversations we should start to really have with the administration.
Well, Bill Clinton had a great phrase. He said it's the definition of what is. I think that's a conversation we'll have to have. Essential on Don Samuel's Park is different if you live right across from it than if you don't. So, I think we'll have to have more conversations on if council's definition converges from the administration's.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Gruber, is that it for you? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I had a question.
President Lightfoot.
I'm sorry, I had a question for Councilmember Gruber.
Okay.
Is the scooter thing, Councilmember Gruber, did that make its way into the budget? I thought the governor's budget, the scooter.
It did.
Yes.
It did. So scooters and e-scooters are now legal. The big issue that we have, thank you for bringing this up, Councilmember Evans, the big issue that we have is that all the good work that we had done in prepping for this is out the window, because Zagster, the company that what the competitive advantage that we had as a city was that we were going to take the company, AKA Zagster, who had our bike share, and we were going to funnel the entire scooter share through them, which was going to allow us to really control things well. And what we learned over the last 2 weeks is that Zaxter is pulling out of almost every market. Anyone who's, including ours, anyone who has read anything about these shared mobility services, they are almost all run, they're kind of like Uber and Lyft. They're all run on investor capital. None of them have proven profitable yet. And what's happening now as we're entering a recession, a pretty dramatic one, is that a lot of the investors have just pulled out, and a lot of these companies now have no cash. So Zaxter has officially told us that they are not renewing their contract. And I know that the administration is quickly working on finding a new entity to take it over, but I do think that's going to set us back pretty significantly, not just on scooters, but on bike share as well.
Wow, thanks.
Councilmember Gruber, do you have an update? I know we were, I was on the Urban Ag call, and they mentioned that you had awareness that in the city newspaper, they talked about not issuing community garden permits this year. Do you have any updates on that situation?
Yes, and actually there's going to be a video. The city is going to be releasing a video shortly with myself and some members of the DRISE team clarifying. So anyone who didn't see, there was an article that came out in city newspaper, I think it was on Thursday or Friday, that basically said the city is not allowing for community gardening this year. That was miscommunication, a little bit of misinformation. The message is that we right now are absolutely not encouraging people to go out and ignore social distancing and be in big groups and small vacant lots and garden. We know for sure that the virus does live on things like steel for a long period of time. So we want to make sure that people are being conscious of the right sanitation and hygiene practices. But on the contrary to not allowing community gardening permits, we are actually, I've worked with the administration, we're actually going to automatically extend everyone's garden permit from 2019. So everyone who had one last year will get one again this year. And the city and myself are going to start to put out weekly videos with the Urban Ag Working Group that gives people skills and resources to start their gardens from the comfort of their house, whether it's their apartment and windowsill or their backyard, without having to go into the gardens. Remember, it's April 6th. Even if it wasn't COVID times, people really should not be planting significantly now because we all know another snow is probably coming at some point. So there was some miscommunication on Thursday or Friday. Unfortunately, it went so far as to make it to the newspapers, but we'll address it pretty quickly.
Thank you. Vice President Lightfoot.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Of course, as been said before, we have gone through our agenda review. Does anybody have any specific questions concerning any of the introductory items that are before us from 142 to 147? If not, I have some additional information that I'll share just to highlight, but I'll wait and listen if I have any questions. Okay, so I've been sending you guys information. Most of this is COVID related. You should have been getting them from BJ, forwarded to you from Deputy Chief Hernandez, the medical director. There have been updates that I've been sending you guys from EMS, fire, law enforcement. I think these updates are very important that you guys read them over, check them out. A lot of helpful information is in there, not only for your constituents, but also for employers or a lot of questions around the COVID. The last one that was sent was updated on 4/1. And on that one, started with 4 different documents that were sent out. The first one is labeled frequently asked questions for EMS, fire, law enforcement, EMS, exposure assessment, employee health. That one, I just want to draw your attention to perspectives. Dr. David Price has a Vimeo video that is very helpful and good to share with empowering and advice for staying safe and protecting your families. I want to draw your attention to that piece. There's a couple of things on each one that I just would like to highlight. On the same document, on number 9A, talks about the temperatures. And I know we've had this conversation about what's safe, what's not safe. If you read that particular portion, it talks about the temperatures and how that is the highest indicator of transmittal for the disease, is your body temperature. So I think that's also important to share and to get more information and education. You know, I'm big on educating the community and getting out information to folks. Number 2 is frequently asked questions for EMS, fire, law enforcement, meetings and training. That there shows you that was also updated on 4/1. A lot of questions about some of our facilities, our public safety facilities, how they're being manned, what's happening in those facilities, how are they being staffed, what's happening with staff. A lot of those questions may come out from your constituents, especially that use these facilities or frequent these facilities or need help in this area. So I'll draw your attention to that second one. The third one, and I'm almost done here, is the PPE cleaning and disinfectant of the PPE. A lot of questions around PPE. What can you wear? What mask can you wear? Can you reuse your mask? Are they a lot of that information, which also was updated on 4/1, is in that document, as well as the fourth document, draw your attention to. So there's 4 of these that all of them were sent to you guys. I'm getting them probably on a weekly basis. I'm sending them out to you on a weekly basis. There's also the 4th one, I think probably is the most important one. Maybe not the most important, but it's very important for our constituents because it talks about frequently asked questions about dispatch and responses. So the fire department is not responding to its normally responded type calls. They've been reduced significantly. And that's on that sheet. It tells you what the hospitals are doing, how they're quarantining, how they're triaging, what calls are considered priority and what calls are not being considered priority. We may potentially receive calls from our constituents saying, hey, I called 911, they didn't come, or I didn't get the normal response I normally get. So this offers you some information on how the responses have been changed and how they're responding under this situation, this crisis that we're under now. So a lot of that information is there, as well as we sent you a meeting with the chief within the next week or 2, a virtual meeting we're having to discuss. We also are looking at the trainee program, not the trainee program, but the recruit class. That's on a day-to-day basis. They're actually looking at potentially, at some point, they may have to make a decision to stop the class. That decision has not been made yet, but they're following it and they're looking at it very closely because the public safety building has been shut down. And the recruit class, of course, as you know, we had a recruit class going through and we have another one that's supposed to start in the fall, but this may significantly change some of that. So these things are being monitored on a daily basis. And especially if we're going to cut some things, I'm hearing a lot of conversation that's coming out from our first responders. Some of them have a lot of questions and they're very concerned about overtime, members floating around to different firehouses with exposure potentially, and they feel like that should be looked at. The 24-hour work schedule, people are looking at that, so maybe they can reduce the times that they're going to the firehouses, as well as in-house overtime, just keeping the overtime to people in the same house and not sending people from house to house to house and increasing potential exposure. So I'm getting those calls now. People are worried, they're concerned, and I just wanted to share that with you guys, the updated information from the medical director and the fire, EMS, and police that's coming on a weekly basis. And I'll make sure that you guys remain and continue to be updated on any updates that I receive.
Vice President Lightfoot, in DES, I know they've gone to great lengths to ensure the social distancing, even to the extent of having, because they do crew work. So yes. I wanted to know how do you get a crew of people in a truck? And apparently they're not doing crew work that way. The ones who cannot drive themselves in a city vehicle, I guess, are being kept at the yard, kept at the DES operations. How does that work for someone like fire, where you're the team, you don't go by yourself? How does that work?
Yeah, there is a significant concern that they're having because of just the way that things are set up with the fire department. they're currently checking all of their members' temperature every 12 hours. Okay, so they're checking them every 12 hours. They know when they come in, the shift change, everybody's getting checked. Everybody has the N95s. When they're going on calls, they're gloved up, they're N95'd up already. But there's very, very, very little social distance in a fire truck. Okay, you're lucky if you're 3 feet apart from each other in the fire truck. So they're practicing as best they can based on the temperature test. That's their gauge to try to keep themselves somewhat safe. But I guess they're concerned, and you bring up a very good question, because you need all 4 people on that vehicle, on that apparatus to do their job. But what they're saying is it's not so much themselves, because they know their exposure to the same people. It's when other people are coming in from other houses to fill in, you know, and things of that nature, where they're beginning to get very, very nervous about potential exposure. Now, based on our town hall meeting that we had with the mayor a week or so ago, I asked the question to the police chief and to the fire chief, had there been any positive exposures with the police and or fire? And I was told by both of them that there, up until this point, that there's been 0.
Okay, well, if possible, I would really like to get a little bit more in-depth presentation on that. I mean, this was one of the questions I believe I asked at the committee meeting a couple months back. You know, what is the plan? How are y'all doing it? I would really like to hear the plan, because from what I'm hearing from you, not so much.
I will send that question on to the mayor's office. I know that the council is planning on having an update with the mayor later today at 4:30. And we did ask for questions to be sent in advance so that they would make sure that they had the appropriate people there. But I will, at the conclusion of this, make sure I forward that on as well.
Because those questions were specifically and particularly for fire, because y'all are a whole little village in a firehouse. I mean, you know, it is literally like the whole concept of how y'all do fire is like, nope.
Let me tell you how bad it is, Mike. I went to headquarters, because you know I'm going crazy here, right? So I figure I step out and I go say hello and go see our first responders and pat them on the back. They wouldn't let me in. They wouldn't let me in headquarters. They said, bro, we're running the tight ship here. You can't come in here. So at first I started to get a little attitude, right? But then I realized, I said, that's the best thing they could have did, because if I go in there and if somebody's positive, they're gonna blame it on me, right? So you're very right. They are not playing around. I'm telling you, like this, it's like Fort Knox at every firehouse right now, and it should be.
Willie, I have a question. Do you know if they're going to authorize testing for first responders soon? At least so they can at least.
Lachey, that is a very, very good question. And in my opinion, first responders should be tested first, so you can have a baseline, right? But I haven't heard any question of any answer to that. And I think, Mike, you're right on it. We do need we need to hear from the chief of what's going on, what's the plan, because we haven't heard any.
Councilmember Harris, this is BJ. There is a 2 o'clock call with the county every weekday, and they do take questions from elected officials there. So if you would like to log in to that and ask a question of the county administration, they have been really good at getting back either on the line directly or reaching back out to individuals. So if that is a question you'd like to ask, feel free to log in and I can get you the contact information, or if you'd like a staff member to ask on your behalf, we can figure out before.
All right, thank you.
So let me be clear then. You're telling me that we are not testing first responders?
No one is saying that.
Rochester?
What I'm saying to you is this coming from my son who works, you know, he would know, right? He hasn't been tested.
And I know for a fact that the EMS,
they have not been, I don't think they've been tested.
No, I know that for a fact.
So that needs to be a specific and particular question to the administration. What is the schedule for testing fire and police?
I think a lot of the testing is done through the county, and Councilmember Harris, one of the items that was brought up on the county call was that EMS workers should be contacting not the hotline, but instead their occupational health through the organization to get tested, especially if they are feeling symptomatic. So
I'm sorry, I'm not. I'm sorry, go ahead, Media. I'll let you finish.
So that's the call from the EMS side. They had not mentioned police and fire, Councilmember Patterson, and I'm not certain if the administration has the capability of ordering tests. I think a lot of that is being handled through the county right now and the limited amount of tests that they have.
Well, so yeah, that's just not acceptable. The nature of their work is that they are forward deployed, and heaven help that anybody anywhere is sick. But if the nature of your job is to hop out of your vehicle and to engage with the public, and that's what you do, you need to be tested regularly. Full stop. So
Yeah,
as a community, we need to have a plan.
So let me be clear. Clarify. When I say EMS is not being tested, that they're not being tested through a process, like through the county, like a regularly testing. They're pushed to a provider. You know what I mean? So, and that doesn't guarantee they're going to be tested.
Right. Well, EMS is a whole nother thing. That's not anything that we particularly control, but police and fire specifically and particularly are our folks. And our folks are engaging with the community, and the nature of their work is that they are out in the community and they engage with people. And in the case of police and fire, they engage pretty closely with people. So not only do I want them to be sick, I don't want them to pass the sickness. And since you can pass this and not show any signs, it is a grave concern. So we need a plan. We can't, look, if this time hasn't taught elected officials anything, it should have taught us all that we need to be forward thinking and concerned on a consistent, regular basis. And just because it ain't happened doesn't mean that it won't happen. And we need to have plans in place, ready to go. And we need to push. So we can't wait for it to happen and then come up with the plan. We need to be saying, look, our fire, our police need to be tested regularly. What is the schedule? What is the plan? Where are the kits? Let's go.
Okay.
Now, I would agree, and just to follow up, Mike, it had to be some kind of plan in New York City, or how else would they know 300 police officers tested positive? So
Right.
How would they know that?
Well, brother, you would hope that there was a plan, and you would hope that they weren't just sitting around waiting for people to call in sick. You would hope.
Yeah, so I'm with you, man. I'm with you, and I guess maybe we can put it on our one-on-one meeting with the administrator later on this evening, because I think that is a priority. And I'm with you 100%. So that's all I have, Madam President. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So that does it for the standing committees. For the external boards, do we have any reports? Most of those are on pause, so we probably don't, right?
No,
ABC, Mitch.
the only one I want to give I'll just say that obviously the convention center will have challenges that I don't even want to get into right now. But put it like this: in a 2-day period, dozens and dozens of events have been canceled. The economic impact on the city and the economic impact on them will be beyond substantial. And I'll have more on that later. But it's lots. Some stuff can be rescheduled. Others maybe not so much, but the impact is mind-blowing.
Yeah. The Hyatt closed last week too.
Yeah, so it's for the workers, for the part-time workers, for the events, for the nonprofits, that some of those events were their biggest events of the year had to be, canceled. So it's the trickle-down effect that we will be assessing for a long time.
Yes, absolutely.
As far as Redco, it's moving along. It's going under a lot of changes, kind of rebranding of Redco. I just want to let everyone know that Councilmember Mike Patterson was elected as the secretary for Redco. So that just happened. We're still meeting on a monthly basis and conducting business. So I want to congratulate Councilmember Patterson for that position.
Okay.
Councilmember Lightfoot, are you all having any public meetings, or does that change now with the different structure?
Yeah, we're doing pretty much Zoom meetings like we are now. So I can ask if those meetings are being posted somewhere or whatnot, and what is the procedures for public viewing them.
Yeah, I mean, their meetings would have to be because their Redco is public dollars, so it's open to anybody.
But it's technically a nonprofit, isn't it?
Yes.
Like, I'm interested because I feel like it's shifted its relationship with the city, and I was wondering if it's still subject to public meetings.
I can find that out.
Okay.
I have a question concerning something that came up during the governor's call or announcement stating that it was up to the cities to take care of public gatherings of people, to call 911 and report that. But then when someone calls 911, they tell them to call the Attorney General. So what are the actual steps we're supposed to be taking from the safety perspective?
I sent you a document. Or BJ did, from Chief Singletary, or actually it was from Chief Mark Simmons, who handles operations. And basically what they're being told by the DA is that they cannot enforce the governor's mandates. That other than our current laws of loitering, things of that nature, which are on the books, but specific to the governor's, and I sent you that information. So
Right.
with the actual code law that it referenced. And so that's the issue that they're kind of having, is the DA is basically saying that they're not going to enforce mandates that are broken down, that are given down from the governor concerning this. So that number that they gave out to everybody is the number that you have to call.
Okay.
I do know that on the state call, I think they mentioned that they're going to be the DA is going to be rolling out some, or the Attorney General, I mean, is going to be rolling out some enforcement procedures. So they know that it's an issue. I guess that's the last information I heard about it. BJ, I wasn't on the state call on Friday or Saturday. Did you hear anything about that?
I'm not certain if I recall exactly if they mentioned that on the state call. I think that the Attorney General's office has been sort of deemed as the authority that would deal with public gatherings.
Okay. Councilmember Gruber, can you tell us about Peace Village and ABC?
Yeah, I might also just kind of give a short update about what's happening right now in the world of food distribution as well, because it's relevant to the work we all do. ABC has closed down their sites as food for grab and go meals, just because attendance and participation was fairly low. We still have this. It's now up to 17 sites between our centers and RCSD, and then the Maplewood Y as well. What ABC is doing, however, a significant amount of is some home deliveries of food to individuals who are homebound and otherwise unable to get to a food pantry or one of the meal sites. So they are working, and I'm also working with Ibero in coordination of those two things. So that's been a very welcome addition. In terms of Peace Village, the last that we spoke as a board about Peace Village was that we were doing everything we can to continue to maintain order there. And it's actually as of the last time I heard, it seems like it's kind of cleaner and more organized there than it has been in a long time. And there's a lot of people have been saying, in terms of COVID-19, it's actually probably a little bit more safe to be in the open space of Peace Village than in a tight emergency shelter. That being said, I think that what we all probably need to recognize as a city and as a community is that the homeless shelters are in significant danger because they are places that cannot effectively abide by social distancing. And there's a lot of transients in terms of people going in and out all the time. And that's a concern. And I think right now, what I'm hearing from the homeless services community is that they're doing everything they can to try to find people shelter. I do think that we need to make sure we're working with the county, who I believe is the entity that should lead any initiative around housing people out of the shelters, because that is what the county has been tasked with doing with HUD dollars for years now. So that's a conversation we need to keep having. But Peace Village, as far as I know, as of today, has a pretty low census. There's not a huge number of people there. And we have not been told by Dr. Mendoza that it needs to close anytime soon. I do just want to add one other thing. So at this point, and this is a lot with my Food Link hat on, but we're partnering with the city, so it's important for folks to hear. The first round of emergency food distributions that we did as an organization was we passed out 10,000 boxes throughout our 10 county service area, with the vast majority being the city of Rochester, and working directly with the food pantries here and beyond. We are now phasing up to do our second phase, which is going to be 8,000 additional boxes. And we're going to be working directly with local governments, making sure that these are very orderly processes. And so we're going to do 2 distributions per 10 counties, except we're going to do 6 here in Monroe. And 3 of them are going to be in the city of Rochester, being done in conjunction with the city of Rochester. What I'm sure each and every one of you receive phone calls from time to time for people looking for food or looking for some type of service that way. We are going to utilize 211 as the sole place to register people for these distributions. 211 will identify where someone's address is and get them to the closest and most convenient one. These are not only for city residents or only for Gates residents or only for Irondequoit residents. They are for anyone in Monroe County. 211 is going to connect people to the right spot. Anyone who cannot make it to a distribution or who signs up too late, because it's first call, first served. This is not the last time we're doing food distributions. We're doing them every single week as often as we can, but supply chains are tight. Things are taking a little longer than usual, but we're doing our best. So you will see a flyer from me. I'll send it to BJ to send to everyone else so you can see this kind of confirmed up in a place. And you can send constituents to call 211 with that information.
Okay.
Can I add just a little bit? Mitch, Councilmember Gruber, I did want to say I stopped by Peace Village last week, and it is incredible. It is beautiful. They've really done a great job. But St. Joe's had actually said that they had gone down and that people were preferring to be relocated to hotels. And, you know, from what I saw, they weren't practicing social distancing. You know, I know it's much easier than a homeless shelter, but I think, you know, there may be some adjustments that need to be had there. And I'm glad that you brought it up, because the homeless shelter situation, I think, is dire, and the county absolutely does need to make some changes there. And I think they're working on it, but, you know, sleeping 3 feet apart head to toe is not appropriate social distancing. And that's kind of what they're recommending in the tight quarters. So I don't know what role this body can have in ensuring that, you know, the homeless shelter bed count is reduced, but it's something that's been really worrying me, and I think it's moving so slow. And from what I've heard, there's a lot of, you know, preparation for if this COVID-19 rips through the homeless community and not when. And I think it's definitely, you know, from what we've seen, only a matter of time. And I think proactive action needs to happen so that we can protect the most vulnerable.
Yeah, I would agree, Mary. The only thing that I would add is that there's it is not. I don't think the city it needs to be the lead entity in this, and I think a lot of people
I don't either
have always leaned on the city to be the government agency that deals with the homeless population. But really, the way the dollars flow and emergency services dollars, I'm not saying anything I know you don't know already, Mary. I'm just, maybe for the larger group, I think this is something that the county needs to be taking the leadership on. And my understanding, last I checked, is that the county actually started a task force specifically on this with members of the homeless services community. And that task force, I think we should get an update, because most homeless shelters are in the city, but that needs to be where the action comes from, I think.
And I agree with
Absolutely.
you.
The city's role in this is, it's not even secondary, it's farther back than that. That is on the lap of the county, and they've just got to do a better job. The resources come to them by their own charter, they're required to do it. So the city is not in any instance able to play a leadership role in this. Our work with Peace Village was sort of an ad hoc thing. So I think that may have confused people that thought, well, you're helping homeless people over there, why don't you do it other places? That was ad hoc. That was not something that's within our scope.
And I just want to clarify that when I say the city's role, I don't mean in any kind of leadership, but I mean, what can we do to encourage this or you push the issue? There was a kind of a group out of the shelter bed task force that was formed to look at census count, but from what I'm hearing, the shelter providers are getting shot down on these calls in this task force. They're sounding the alarm and being told that basically that's not what the shelter bed task force is for. So I'm concerned. I kind of thought once that group was formed that it would move forward, but it doesn't seem to be. So just, and it may just be individual people. If we can, raise that up to people we know at the county, but time is of essence. And it worries me the longer that, there's 60 people at House of Mercy. They need 20 people to be able to really do a good job. So, and from what I understand, the hotel rooms exist, the money's there, it will be reimbursed by FEMA. So I don't know what the barriers are.
So what we can do, and I can directly in addressing the mayor to see if she can light a hotter fire under the county exec to get some movement in that regard.
That would be welcome.
Okay. Are there
Another
any-
request?
Yes.
So was just looking through the notes for the county call, and there had been some concern expressed for a while here about getting some real demographic information, particularly race data of who's being affected and what that status is. It was asked on Saturday. They said they would get it. Can you submit for council on the call that we would like that information also? And we'd like to know why that information hasn't been propagated.
They
Plain
did
and
answer
simple.
that already, council member. They
Okay.
said that there is not enough information number-wise in order to separate it by race without bringing risk to exposing the names or identities of individuals who've passed away. And they do not want to, and the director of the Board of Health, of the Department of Health, Dr. Mendoza, said that he will look at releasing that information when it becomes, when there's a distance in time from the deaths so that they're not as easily able to be identified. And they don't want for folks to learn about deaths of family members through this information and instead of through their family.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't buy that. So, because here's the point. You telling
You
me
can call into the
that,
call, Mike. Mike,
look, you telling me that a Hispanic female between the ages of 30 and 40 passed away does not tell me any specifics on who she is, but it's the kind of information we need to know. The first person to die in this county was a Black man who actually worked at the hospital he died at, and his name was all over the newspaper. So I don't really understand what the problem is.
Well,
They did.
the health department didn't put his name out. His
Well,
family did.
I understand that. I don't want his name. I just want the demographic info. And I mean,
Yeah,
I
Mike.
think, I'll get on the call.
Mike, get on the call today, Mike, and you can ask that question. You're welcome on the call.
I know this weekend they had the age groups of the people that died. The 19 people that died, they had the age groups of those folks.
And that's good, but the age data with some race data would also be a nice thing too. Because let's be honest, It's America, man. Race matters.
The other thing that I'm recalling now, council member, is that for the reporting, the race and ethnicity was not a mandated box. So when they look at some of the reporting, only I think 25% of the deaths that had the reporting actually had race information. So they are actively looking at trying to find out some of this stuff, but because of the lack of reporting on race and ethnicity and it not being required in some of the forms, they were not able to get accurate counts on it.
And Mike, I understand your point, because I will tell you, one of the things that made me upset earlier on with this crisis is Facebook, which everyone knows that I hate. There were ignorant folks, particularly in the African-American community, going around saying that African-Americans couldn't get COVID-19 and they couldn't get sick from COVID-19, where in Chicago, half of the folks that have died have been African-American. Right. In Detroit, 60% of the people who have died have been African-American. But we have folks in our own community sending around ignorant, silly memes early on in this crisis saying that Black folks couldn't get it. So it could be very interesting to put this information out so people can understand it. I don't know if it will be done in a timely manner, but I do understand and see your point.
Okay, so we're about out of time, and
President Scott, just ask very quickly, is there an update on the New Americans Council? Or is that just
Yes,
phoned
I
indefinitely?
spoke with Justin Raj on that, and it is currently postponed at present time.
okay, so I think that wraps it up for us. I thank you all.
I'm
Now,
gonna
we have a gathering this afternoon. Oh, is that
I'm going to
correct?
stop the live stream if you give me one moment, and then yes, we will be rejoining at 4:30.